Good afternoon. On behalf of Engineers Australia, I'm delighted to welcome you all to our Thought Leader series, Smart City Solutions, Setting Technology Foundations. My name is Megan Purdy and I'm from Engineers Australia. Firstly, in keeping with our custom, Engineers Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and to their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Before we get started today, I would like to acknowledge that today's webinar is being hosted with Engineers Australia's industry partner, ABB. ABB is a leading global technology company that pushes the boundaries of technology to enable the transformation of society and industry to achieve a more productive, sustainable future. Innovations has been in its DNA since they were founded more than 130 years ago to take advantage of a new technology called electricity. Today we'll hear from 3 speakers, followed by a live audience Q&A. I encourage you all to send your questions through to our speakers via the chat box. I'd now like to welcome our moderator for today, Zoe Ether. Zoe is an experienced consultant, Churchill Fellow and engineer who specialises in smart communities. The combination of Zoe's engineering background and her ability to engage and explain complex topics in a friendly and informative way allows her to offer future thinking, useful and realistic strategic advice. Zoe keeps up to date with the latest trends and shares her learnings through hosting the Smart Community podcast. Through her boutique consultancy, My Smart Community, she offers strategic advisory on dealings with disruption, leveraging infrastructure spend and major projects, smart technology in regional communities, and facilitating genuine collaboration. Please join me in welcoming Zoe Ether.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome again to our audience. I'd like to now welcome our first speaker, Rory Brown. Rory Brown is the Director of the Smart Places Programs portfolio in the Cities and Active Transport Division. In the role, he directs the design, development, implementation, and transition of Smart Places programs and initiatives for the New South Wales Government across regional and metropolitan areas, including the flagship Smart Western City program to co-create the Western Parkland City as a future-focused, digitally enabled city. Prior to joining the New South Wales Government, Rory held a variety of strategy and digital leadership roles in the telecommunications sector, both locally and abroad, as well as a couple of digitally based startups. Please welcome Rory Brown.
Good morning, everybody, and Zoe, thank you for that kind introduction. It's great to be here today in this opportunity to speak about the Smart Places journey for the New South Wales Government. Before I do that, I would like to acknowledge country. I'm speaking to you today from the land of the Camaragal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, this morning, I want to go through 3 things. I do have quite a few slides here, so I might zip through this pretty quickly. But the 3 things I want to talk to you about is, number 1, just to give you a bit of a context of New South Wales Government Smart Places strategy, talk to you about our delivery over the last couple of years, and then close off with where we are going to next. Okay, with that, let's launch in and Smart Places strategy. I appreciate some of you might be aware of this. I'm really pleased to say that we do publish pretty much everything that we can on our website, and the details of that are at the end in this presentation. But what's our vision overarching? Well, on a really straightforward basis about delivering outcomes for citizens and businesses by applying a consistent, that's a key word, the consistent, seamless, place-based approach. Place-based is also key to Smart Places implementation. And what are we talking about Smart Places? We're talking about places of data, talking about ensuring that we can get in smart tech, sensors and so forth, generating data and insights about a place so that we can deliver these better outcomes for the citizens businesses in that place. I mentioned the consistency is important. It's going to be no help to any of us if we're all going off and starting to do our own standards and processes, methodologies, frameworks, etc. Because a big part of the value here is how we can actually collaborate and come together. If I think about government, how the range of different agencies that are working can actually work together rather than in silos or just in vertical way. Um, so with that, we have a smart place strategy, and that was launched in August 2020 by the Minister for Digital, Minister Dominello, and it speaks to a number of areas where we see that smart places can have impact or have relevance, and it's actually quite broad. It includes areas from sort of skills and jobs, development, safety, security, environmental quality, right through to obviously collaboration connection as well. And then from that strategy, we had an action plan. There were 14 actions in there, and we'd ordered them in sort of three categories. One was around foundations, where we wanted to make sure that we effectively had the policy pieces in place, the standards and governance to be able to actually get smart places going and implemented. And that speaks to that consistency point I mentioned earlier on. Enablers was, I guess, a catalyst to how we can actually make sure investment is happening and initiatives being delivered, and then programs covered sort of place-based opportunities of work, but also education and training that was in there. Now, I'm going to switch tack. So if that's a little bit of the context, let me just talk to you about what we've been doing over the last 2 years. So I mentioned the strategy launched in August 2020, and we quickly at the same time set up an advisory council for us. It's a range of experts. It's independent, so they're outside of government, and does include representation from a number of uh, um, associations, as well as our regional and metropolitan split experts there. Probably one of the key things for us is in December 2020, we launched our $45 million Smart Place Acceleration Program, and that that is focused on sort of catalyzing initiatives and actually getting going for the state. I'd say the rest of 2021 was characterized by sort of broader communication and engagement pieces, whilst we were sort of starting to beaver away on our bits of work delivery against that action plan. So through the back end of the last year, we were able to get out our Smart Western City program and 5G strategy, which were documents that looked at the opportunities in Western Sydney, and that was linked to the Western Sydney City deal. We launched a customer charter as well, a playbook, and I'm going to talk about a few of these things in a Smart Places public guide. And then most recently, we've just kicked off an innovation series where we're looking actually to tap into opportunities more in the small medium business sector, but also to pick up the fact that there are areas where we've been doing work so far, but we haven't yet kind of got as much cut through as we'd want to do. So let me just take you through some of these, the kind of the key highlights. First is the Smart Places customer charter. We actually think that's was the first of its kind in Australia, and the big insight for us is that a lot of the times we were seeing smart technology go into a particular place, but it was being um, done um, not necessarily without people's consent, but certainly without the level of engagement with the community that you would want to see. And from this, we started to do a bit of work to say, okay, well, what would be the best approach to ensure that we are showing a commitment to community involvement, that we are creating smart places with people, not just for them. And we established the Smart Places Customer Charter. It's got sort of three foundational tenets in terms of ensuring connection to country, sustainability, resilience, and that benefits for people that I mentioned earlier, and then 6 principles within that to help us deliver that out. Again, that's publicly available for you to access. And I'd really encourage you, if you do have the opportunity, to pick that up. We have it out there, and what we're actually seeking is for government and businesses to sign up on this, so that we are starting to get that. I think that people first approach when we think about smart place design and development. We also launched the Smart Places Playbook. Really, this was a putting in together everything that we've learned and making that available online. So that's everything from the processes that we've run, thinking about how we develop smart places strategies, learnings, considerations around technology, including a core bit on the digital connectivity, as well as relevant policies at a state government level, and also what our view of sort of standards, and basically a sort of one-stop shop if you're thinking about doing a smart place project, or and regardless of where you are in that journey. It's absolutely a living guide. So version 1 is out now, and we'll keep updating that as we learn more ourselves. We collaborated with the public space team as well to do a smart public spaces guide. The insight here was we wanted to make sure that those that were doing things like urban design, public space and place managers, so forth, could really start to see and um, get inspired by the opportunities that can happen when you sort of think about your place and think about the technology that can go in, and how that can bring sort of greater benefits for the place that you're designing for, above and beyond sort of the business as usual that we're there today. Again, just trying to make it really practical for people to get going. And then, of course, the Smart Places Acceleration Program, and I do want to spend a couple of minutes on this. It was a $45 million investment that we set up. Um, it wasn't a grant model, and a lot of people thought it was a grant model, but it was actually a co-investment model. And what that means is we were sort of in wanting to ensure that as state government made investments in these initiatives, that it was doing in that sort of collaborative way. We weren't just handing up money. We wanted to be involved, and we wanted to make sure the state agencies were involved, working with local government, the private sector, to deliver the range of initiatives that are on there. A big piece for us is that you absolutely will learn by doing, and so if we're involved in these initiatives, then we can get the learnings out of that, and we can start to understand what does it take to replicate to scale. How can we make sure that these things sort of aren't orphaned or siloed, and make data available and so on, and start to build these tools for others, which I think is a key piece of work that we always have at the front of our mind. Let me run through some of the things that we have funded. There's over 20 to date, and we're actually sort of very close to exhausting our funding for this first tranche. But we've been working with Camden City Council on envisioning Camden in 3D, and linking that in with the work that's happening on the spatial digital twin. And a big key there is about how we can sort of improve the community engagement, but not just for, say, one building or one particular area, but across the whole of the LGA. Sydney Olympic Park Authority are looking at opportunities for taking their current irrigation system, linking that in with environmental sensoring forecasts, and using AI so that they can try and deliver the greenest environment, which is obviously a cooler environment, through their irrigation systems, but minimizing water use. Again, once we solve things like this, the intent is always then we make it available for others to effectively copy. We're working with a range of councils both metropolitan and regional on environmental sensing and air quality initiatives. We know this is one of the areas that LGAs in particular see as a good opportunity to get going. We also know that they're always asking for support, and this project is one of those that starts to help to do that, and looking to make it ve- much easier for them to get going in this particular area. For me, I actually quite like this project as well, because it's looking at how we can actually take low cost air quality sensors and start to get a richness of data and insight about a particular place. And then finally, I wanted to mention our Asset AI, which is one of the more recent ones that we're doing this with Transport for New South Wales and a number of a couple of councils, Blaney and Canterbury Bankstown. And again, that's using AI on images or in sometimes real time video feeds of the sort of road conditions, so we can start to understand fully the condition and get more efficient in how we do the repairs. Obviously, this one's quite topical at the moment following the recent damage from the rains that we've been having. I mentioned as well there are smart places based programs of work, and we've got two that are sort of well done at the moment. One for Western City, which I mentioned earlier on, but we've also done quite a big piece of work around the Central River City, so Parramatta and Cumberland. These are really strategic programs that look at the range of sort of initiatives that you need to take to ensure that these places are sort of future focused and smart enabled. And then finally, in terms of our sort of current work program, and this is sort of been by no means everything that we're doing, but just some of the highlights for you. I did want to pick out one which I've got direct carriage for around Digital Built New South Wales, which is our thinking about how we can start to take a standardized whole of government approach to the digitization across the infrastructure lifecycle. And it's not to say that things aren't already happening, and there's a few examples on the screen of the great stuff that schools infrastructure, for instance, are doing on modular building assessments, or the New South Wales Building Commissioner doing tracking and tracing of the materials all the way through uh, um, the supply chain to the as-built environment, and of course spatial digital twin. But the challenge I think here is, how do we take these exemplars and then be able to lift the way whole of government goes forth in uh, sort of planning, designing, delivering, operating, maintaining infrastructure. Okay, with that bit of whirlwind, I wanted a few more slides just to close off and kind of say, well, what's next? So we're actually right in the middle of our Action Plan 2.0. I feel that we've made really strong progress in the original action plan, but we're also very clear that there is more to do. And so this is why we're in the midst of trying to understand kind of what that is. I think on a real sort of summary basis, it's great that we've got some of these key foundations and enablers in place, and pilot projects, as I just talked about, are going. But there is still a big sort of future state that we want to get to. So things like the connected technologies and the use of data is absolutely core, and maybe not just an add-on. That we're looking at ways that we can actually start to layer solutions again, not just sort of one-off initiatives, but layered solutions, layered smart solutions in a place. There's probably a piece around the quantification of benefits. We're still hearing from people that might not yet be clear. So we really need to nail that. There's a piece around equity as well. In this it can't just be for a particular set of people or a particular place that these benefits will come from. More collaboration and sharing, of course, and in particular, I just call out the sharing of data. I don't know how many conversations I have where that's called up as essentially a challenge. I'm just talking about internal conversations within government. So how are we helping develop our action plan 2.0? Well, we're doing lots of engagements. We're seeing lots of people. Hopefully, you might have seen or been in one of these sessions that we've had. And we've been asking just sort of relatively straightforward questions, and seeking the feedback on kind of, what do others see as the opportunity? Where are we now? What do we need to change, and who needs to be involved? And kind of the overarching piece that we got back, the key messages are on this slide, but for me, there was the strong and line that we're at a critical junction now. As I said, good stuff has happened, but we got to really make sure that we take that and catalyze and move forward, so we can really do sort of a step change, that we can start to make smart places replicable, scalable. And there includes, therefore, things like work needing to be done in the capability piece, how the investment happens to reform, and things like procurement. That place-based approach is still important, and all those things need to come together for scale. You see in the slide as well, we certainly got from our regional discussions about connectivity is critical. Honestly, both regional and metropolitan, especially as we move forward into 5G, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Ericsson have to say on that topic later on. So final thing for me is really, what does the future look like? A couple of key callouts, and I look forward to discussing this with you and hearing what the other presenters have to say. But absolutely, we're going to need more collaboration across all tiers of government. We see industry and associations having a big role to play. I don't think anyone has the particular solutions to make this sort of stacked and fully scaled. We've got to work together on that. But we also do need to start thinking about different approaches to the asset and technology ownership as well. And that links to this concept around shared resources. So do something once, make it available for everyone. Let me close by just saying, looking forward to the discussion later on. There's definitely still a hard road to go in this, but it's absolutely possible to realize the potential, and I look forward to connecting and discussing with you later. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Rory, for your input. I'd now like to welcome our second speaker, James Evans. James Evans is the head of networks at Ericsson Australia and New Zealand. Having worked with Ericsson since 1995, James, with more than 20 years' experience from the telecommunications industry in Asia Pacific, Europe, and North America. James has expertise in mobile networks, including 3GPP radio technology and standards, and is currently working with the introduction of 5G radio systems. This includes spectrum and regulatory requirements, equipment and hardware requirements, and also 5G use case development. Please welcome James Evans.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to have the opportunity to present at this forum. First, a big thank you to Engineers Australia and the team for making this all happen. Today I'll talk about 5G as a key enabling technology in a smart society and the benefits that it brings. 5G is a platform for huge innovation. It was designed to be open from the start, enabling innovation from a wide ecosystem. Previous generations were centred around consumer and personal communications. 5G, however, will serve consumers, enterprises, and take the Internet of Things to the next level, where superior connectivity is a prerequisite. We believe it's so powerful it'll be the next big shift in society, the fourth industrial revolution. Look, today I'll introduce Ericsson and our role in 5G, briefly what's happening with 5G globally and here in Australia, and why 5G is so important for industry and society, and then some of the use cases that we see are happening. First up, a little bit about Ericsson. We're a world leader in ICT and 5G. We enable our customers, other industries and society at large to capture the full value of connectivity. We supply communication infrastructure, services and software to the telecom industry and other sectors. It all started in a workshop in Stockholm back in 1876, where Lars Magnus Ericsson repaired telegraph instruments and undertook small mechanical engineering jobs. Today, we serve customers in more than 180 countries and have more than 100,000 employees worldwide, of which 26,000 of these are dedicated to R&D. It's a very strong focus. We have more than 57,000 granted patents, and we continue to invest to strengthen our 5G leadership. In Australia, Ericsson is intrinsically linked to the history of telecommunications. 2022 marks 132 years of Ericsson in Australia. Without going into all the details across our portfolio areas, here you can see our 10 key offerings, which is a comprehensive portfolio that makes it possible for our customers to provide exceptional experiences for consumers and to support digitalization of enterprise. 5G radio access, core and transport products and solutions, dedicated networks such as 5G private networks for enterprises, network services to design, build, optimize and support mobile networks and manage services, and IoT platforms to address large-scale connectivity of devices. "5G networks are being deployed much faster than expected, and with this brings new capabilities to networks. Today, there's more than 209 5G networks in commercial service, and on average, over 1 million new 5G subscribers are being added every day. This has been enabled by a very strong device ecosystem, with more than 800 5G devices commercially available, and that was actually at the end of last year. Also, at the end of last year, our estimate was that 35% of the world's population already had 5G coverage. South Korea was actually one of the first 5G deployments. Today, 5G has more than 93% population coverage and is deployed over the low, mid and high spectrum bands. At the end of 2021, the monthly traffic per subscriber had grown to 27 gigabytes per month, and 66% of mobile traffic was all on 5G. Ericsson is leading the market, powering at least 121 live 5G networks across 5 continents and in 54 countries. Standalone 5G networks are now happening, with faster access to higher data rates, lower latency, and improved network slicing that enables new use cases and revenue streams. Standalone is really how 5G was intended. As a result of Ericsson's focus on R&D, the Ericsson radio system hardware, for example, is 5G ready since 2015. And in total, we've already shipped 8 million 5G ready radios for our customers since 2015. Mobile data growth has been very significant. And in fact, mobile data traffic has increased 300-fold in the past 10 years. Looking forward at what we can expect, I'll share some insights from our mobility report. The mobility publication that comes out every 6 months, and the next one's actually due in only a couple of weeks. It's a public publication. We see 5G scaling up with more than 660 million subscriptions at the end of 2021. By 2027, there'll be 4.4 billion 5G subscriptions worldwide, and this will be nearly half of all mobile subscriptions in that time. This will really make 5G the fastest wireless generation, or G, to implement ever, and it'll reach that 1 billion subscribers 2 years earlier than the same for the 4G networks. At the end of 2021, 2 billion people were covered by 5G, and in 2027, the 5G population coverage is estimated to be 75%. The monthly global average usage per smartphone was around 11.5 gigabytes at the end of 2021, and is forecast to reach 41 gigabytes by the end of 2027. You saw earlier that in Korea, it's already 27 gigabytes, and that's the result of a world-leading, fast-adopting market. By 2027, we expect to see 5G networks carrying 62% total of all mobile data traffic, what's also interesting is this is more than the current mobile data traffic today. Fixed wireless access is now offered by more than 75% of service providers globally, and this is a key use case that is now happening with 4 and 5G networks. Taking a closer look at 5G here in Australia. Australia is a global leader in the transition to 5G. We've got the 5G fundamentals quite right here in Australia. We have initial spectrum for 5G across low, mid and high bands, and that mobile operators have made significant investment in spectrum and network rollout to achieve world-leading 5G coverage. For example, Telstra's 5G network covers nearly 78% of the population, targeting 95% population coverage by 2025. Optus has over 1,800 5G sites, TPG more than 1,000 sites, and the deployments are continuing. And there is growing evidence of accelerated 5G trials and commercial use across industry verticals. For example, Australian construction company Taylor uses Telstra's 5G network with Cradlepoint 5G optimised routers for bandwidth-heavy connected devices and applications. Taylor is using smart IoT sensory devices, mixed reality headsets, and 8K video streaming for improved on-site safety. The early and effective rollout of 3 trusted and secure live 5G networks in Australia, not deterred by COVID, has created valuable assets for a short-term competitive advantage for Australia to leverage, including attracting new global investment. When it comes to our technology leadership, we believe in creating a network platform that is a foundation for innovation in the ecosystem. This foundation is depicted here. In the section along the bottom, you'll see that our 5G digital infrastructure is supported by the 5 attributes of our technology leadership: sustainable, reliable and resilient, cloud native, secure, and data-driven. In the middle row, you can see the range of network capabilities or platform values that our customer operators are able to explore, such as providing coverage, voice, high speeds and very low latency, network slicing, and others. What this results in is what you can see along the top, an array of use cases across many industries and settings. This is about creating the right foundation that will serve societies, industries, and people in their ongoing digitalization and sustainability goals. If we look now at use cases evolving, we can consider as 4 IoT or Internet of Things segments. Starting from what we can achieve today and going forwards, let's start with massive IoT on the left, a segment including both narrowband IoT and Category M, supporting very low cost devices with long battery life, deployed in massive numbers, and supporting use cases that demand very low data usage in networks. Use cases such as fleet management or logistics, asset management or smart metering. This segment can already be deployed in today's 4G commercial networks and is continuing to grow in terms of ecosystem and numbers of connections. The next segment, the broadband IoT segment, combines many of the capabilities of mobile broadband to achieve higher throughput, low latency, and larger volumes than massive IoT can support. Together with some additional functionality, this can support IoT use cases for drones or unmanned aerial vehicles or augmented reality and automotive. This segment can already be supported in today's 4G networks and will be able to support even more advanced use cases when moving from 4G to 5G with higher speed, lower latency, and other capabilities that 5G will bring. Then we come to the critical IoT segment. This segment will place in 5G networks where the benefits of ultra-low latency, very high reliability and availability can be realised and utilised to support complex use cases in, for example, industrial, automotive and utilities verticals. Use cases such as robotic control, intelligent transport systems and smart grid automation. Finally, and probably the most complex segment, the industrial automation segment. For this, some very challenging use cases specific to the industrial campus and manufacturing environments can be supported. Use cases such as collaborative robotics, which would require functionality such as industrial protocols in addition to time-sensitive networks and very precise positioning. Now, some examples. For more than 90 years, Boliden, which is a mine in Sweden, has been exploring, extracting and processing base and precious metals. A key issue has been collapsing tunnel walls and roofs, which is obviously a very major safety hazard and issue to address. To prevent that, these long rock bolts are inserted into the bedrock. However, as the rock shifts, these bolts might not be enough to support the structure, resulting in a collapse. Sensor-equipped connected rock bolt is one way to monitor the movement of the rock. The NB IoT-enabled rock bolt devices transmits data to a cloud platform. By constantly monitoring the bolts, increases safety in the work environment and minimises unplanned stops in production. An alternative approach is to wire these rock bolts. That could mean hundreds of kilometres of cables to manage and creates inefficiencies in the ways this is deployed. Ultimately, these wireless rock bolts increases safety and production in this workplace. If I look now at an example from Ericsson, and Ericsson is an example of an enterprise-powered 5G using the technology and smart manufacturing capabilities in a factory that produces 4G and 5G radio technology products. Every step of production got modernised with cellular IoT, Industry 4.0 and AI tools and technologies implemented, including an upgraded automated packing line. The automated factory stands among the most advanced manufacturers in the industry. A lot of new opportunities and technologies has been enabled by using cellular connectivity. Among many of the smart use cases is a factory-powered connectivity, is a drone use case that you can see on the top left of the slide. In the past, the staff had to drive forklifts to fetch goods and manually scan the codes to complete the information in the resource planning system. This way, working was both labour-intensive and time-consuming. Now the drone carries out autonomous flight and completes code scanning based on utilising internal maps and established radar navigation. One flight can scan all the physical goods information from multiple racks. It greatly reduces the inventory counting time, avoids inventory difference caused by multiple goods movements and the risk of goods damaging, and can ensure inventory accuracy. The 5G system also does surveillance, controls AGVs and other applications as well. To give some further examples more broadly in the industry, Centrica Storage Limited, CSL, and Vodafone Business will build a gas plant of the future by launching 5G-ready mobile network for the oil and gas industry. The setup will help CSL digitalise much of its critical maintenance and engineering operations. CSL will get real-time visibility of work at the plant, as well as the condition and status of the various elements of the facility, enabling it to streamline activities, reduce cost, and increase safety. Connected workers will be alerted of potential gas emissions, for example. Together with Telefonica, Deutschland, and Ericsson, Mercedes-Benz Cars is putting in place the world's first 5G mobile for automobile production in its Factory 56. The use of state-of-the-art 5G network technology allows Mercedes-Benz Cars, among other things, to optimise existing production processes in its plants. Ports are an area where 5G is being used to innovate and transform. An example, BT and Belfast Harbour are collaborating to build a state-of-the-art 5G ecosystem within the port. The deployment will allow Belfast Harbour to drive operational efficiencies and accelerate its digital transformation through optimising processes across transport, logistics, supply chain and shipping, as well as boosting productivity. The partnership will also explore how 5G and other emerging technologies such as AI, IoT and connected autonomous vehicles can be used together to enhance public safety and physical security. Taylor Construction, and I briefly mentioned this earlier, is using smart IoT sensors, mixed reality headsets and 8K video streaming for improved on-site safety. They're doing things such as holographic building visualization, wide area safety scanning, IoT structural sensing and real-time design display. At Ericsson, we're heavily focused on sustainability. Globally, Ericsson has pledged to be a carbon neutral organisation by 2030, and we're making great progress on this. At the end of 2021, we had achieved a 60% reduction in carbon emissions compared to our 2016 baseline. Moreover, though, to meet customer expectations and help the global telecommunication industry eventually reach net zero, Ericsson has introduced new innovations to reduce network energy use. A unique approach to 5G ecosystem design has broken the energy curve, enabling exponential data traffic growth without increasing energy consumption. By the end of this year, we expect our 5G portfolio to be 10 times more energy efficient for the same transferred data than 4G. 5G will be the most energy efficient standard yet, but the capabilities enabled by the technology, indeed by broadband cellular connectivity generally, are unique, powerful, and an immediate enabler of carbon reduction efforts. Increasingly interconnected supply chains, transportation, and energy networks can share data better than ever before to increase efficiency and productivity, in turn optimizing systems to achieve lower carbon emissions. Connectivity enables new solutions to fight climate change and powers economies and societies in a sustainable way. Our sector is uniquely positioned to enable this. With that, I'll conclude. Look, thanks for your time, and I look forward to any questions you may have shortly. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, James. I'd now like to welcome our third and final speaker, Mario Macri. Mario has more than 20 years of experience working across oil and gas, chemicals, and the energy sectors throughout the Asia Pacific region. As the National Sales Manager for ABB, Australia's electrification business, Mario leads a 60-plus strong national sales team covering all aspects of electrification across major industry segments such as mining, oil and gas, power distribution, e-mobility and transport, including rail and aviation. As ABB Australia's digital lead, Mario is advancing the role of digitally connected systems and enabled solutions and services and supports customers with their digital transformation journey. Please welcome Mario Macri.
Thanks for the intro. Hi, everybody. I'm Mario Macri, the Head of Sales for Electrification and Country Digital Lead for ABB Australia. Really pleased to be with you all here today and discuss ABB solutions that enable a smart society development. We call it smart societies because we encompass everything from both the cities and industry, so namely the places we both live and work. Okay, let's jump into it. For those of you who don't know ABB very well, we're a global technology company, about 130 years of history of innovation, about 100,000 people around the world, and we invest approximately 1.5 billion US year on year on R&D. Proudly been in Australia since 1906, and we have about 800 people today operating in 11 locations around the country. Our technology is embedded in thousands of Australians' buildings, manufacturing and industrial sites across most segments like mining, oil and gas, health, transport, manufacturing, and the list goes on. ABB comprises of four main business areas, providing product systems and software solutions from low and medium voltage through to electric vehicle charging in our electrification business, to control systems and end-to-end process industry solutions in our process automation business. Our motion business supplies most of the world's drives and motors, and our robotics and discrete automation business delivers advanced industrial and collaborative robots and smart factory and manufacturing automation solutions. At ABB, we have a mission to zero, and we see digitalization and technology as being the key driver. In support of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we have set ourselves a number of key targets, including carbon neutrality in our own operations and helping our customers reduce CO2 by about 100 megatons by 2030. So that's about the same amount of carbon sequestered as 1.7 billion tree seedlings growing for 10 years, or about 21,000 wind turbines running for a year, or about 30 million cars off the road. So by far the biggest impact we can have as a company on reducing greenhouse gas emissions is through our technologies, which reduce energy use in industry, buildings and transport, sectors that account for nearly 3/4 of the global energy consumption unto themselves. Transportation, as an example, is a major consumer of energy. ABB provides charging infrastructures for electric vehicles and e-buses, trains, trams and industrial vehicles. Including proudly in Australia, we're delivering the Brisbane Metro and Perth Metro e-bus solutions and into mining equipment and other industries. Buildings, some estimates have buildings using as much as 30% of our energy consumption. HVAC and lighting alone can account for about 50% of the energy usage in an average commercial building. By incorporating smart automation and electrification infrastructure, we can decrease carbon footprint and energy costs of about 30 to 50%, as well as improving building occupant comfort and building usability. Hence, why we believe digitalization is the key to sustainability. Okay, just a few of the mega trends that we see at ABB and how it links to our capabilities. So our world's facing a historic transition as the greatest urban migration of all time continues. Today, more than half the world's populations live in urban areas, and it's expected that 2.5 billion people will migrate to cities by 2050. At a global level, that's equivalent to building 30 cities the size of Paris every year for the next 30 years. The smart cities market is expected to grow about 20% in just 5 years, and the challenge for building owners and city planners is to create more energy and space efficiency solutions, integrating things like renewable energy sources and driving citizen, occupant, and user comfort. In this scenario, the world's electricity consumption will increase by 60% in the next 20 years, and close to 60% of that electricity is used in buildings alone. At ABB, we're proud that our solutions help meet the growing demand while minimizing the environmental impact and creating value. So this shift to electricity use is growing at 2 times the rate of any other form of energy. This is driven by, of course, new consumption models such as EVs, electric vehicles, advanced data centers, and the enablement of more efficient use, integration, and distribution of generation, things like renewables and energy storage. The International Energy Agency estimates that the share of electricity in the energy mix will rise to more than 35% in 2040 from 23% in 2018. So electricity, therefore, must be fundamentally safe, smart, and sustainable. And that's exactly what we do. In digitalization, the demand for data is increasing, driven by the digital transformation of industries, processes, procurement, and services. By 2025, 75 billion plus internet-connected devices will be used worldwide. So the confluence of the IoT, or Internet of Things, with buildings, energy, utilities, and industries creating a significant opportunity. As an example, building owners, operators, and occupants that'll allow them to create smart, digitally connected spaces that support people at their center. ABB has an installed base of about 70 million connected devices and 70,000 control systems. So at ABB, we're uniquely positioned to support society and industry through this transition and digital transformation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about digitalization. Digitalization allows the insight via intelligent data. That insight is delivered by software solutions and analytics capable of providing deep, real-time review of complex systems, allowing decisions to be made sometimes by the systems themselves, namely autonomy. The key to a smart city or a smart building or a smart asset is to allow the entire ecosystem to be digitalized and integrated. This unlocks the ability for systems to connect and communicate to the benefit of its citizens, employees, businesses, etc., and gain that true insight. In business, for example, comparing multiple sites globally, or for energy systems to detect faults or areas of strain previously unable to be done, ensuring an immediate response to avoid any adverse outcome. At ABB, we call our portfolio of digital software and solutions bringing value to our customers as ABB Ability. It's all under that one banner. And I'll share with you some examples in the coming slides of how we make this come to life for our customers, how we make dumb devices get smart, how we get actionable insights, get the data to analyze, extract value from that data and greater insight, complementing expertise and professionals' intelligence, experience and capabilities with greater insights and data to which they can apply their knowledge, combining our expertise with their domain expertise. Connecting disparate systems truly at the heart of smart cities and smart society, and gaining new insights, efficiencies, scale, speed, and decision, and unlocking value. I would say most of ABB products these days are digital natives and, pardon me, are ready to provide data outputs that then allow insights to occur. Many times we find industries with products capable of providing greater insight and ready to be connected, but merely unaware of how they can let that occur. This is where communication technologies like 5G, coupled with IoT technologies, become real game changers in the ability to digitalize and connect more things and gain insights. Okay, so this is an Engineers Australia webinar, so I thought we'd get just a little bit technical and start to dive into some examples. So I wanted to show you some real examples from here on out in the rest of my presentation to see how we can bring this to life. I'll start with showing what you've got on the screen now, which is a reference architecture from an airport. The reason I use this is because it's a great general mix between an industrial site and it has a little bit of buildings in it as part of the functionality. You'll see at the bottom the field layer, which are the smart devices, and you can see not all of those are within ABB scope of supply. So it's really important. Fundamentally, we need to have open source technologies allowing users to connect as they wish, not solely to only ABB equipment. This is critical in the smart cities ecosystem. We then have the next two layers above that, the edge and management layers, where we get into supervisory systems and control systems. But it's this topmost layer where we bring in cloud-based software solutions and interconnectivity. You can see some of the devices in the field layer may directly connect up to the cloud layer or to each other in the field, sometimes via wireless communication. The beauty of this architecture is you can see multiple protocols from Modbus, BACnet, KNX being integrated all up into one management layer. At this layer, you can connect multiple assets or buildings or systems together. So namely, you can start to connect assets across a smart society together and have them exchanging data and information. Just wanted to give you one of the software solutions that help us drive this integration. And this software solution is called ABB Ability Energy and Asset Manager. So it integrates energy and asset management into a single intuitive dashboard. So it provides full remote visibility of the asset and electrical system behavior. It provides insights that help minimize costs and risk and maximize performance and safety across assets. So it's an energy management tool for large to small sites, including segment specific, so it can be tailored for buildings or data centers or other key segments. It's an asset management tool that allows you to monitor condition, the performance of electrical systems from low to medium voltage and other things like chargers, all kinds of electrical equipment infrastructure. And it'll tell you about your power consumption pattern and the condition of your assets and represent them graphically. So it allows you to start to enter the area of predictive maintenance, predictive analytics. It gives events and alarms. It has APIs that allows you to integrate into other third-party assets, so fully open architecture and solutions, as I mentioned earlier. It allows people to start to look at their assets and analyze and manage their health. It allows them to digitally twin their assets and condition monitor their assets in real time if they wish. Okay, so let's bring this to life with a real example here. This is ABB's Energy and Asset Manager. It's running live at our building in Italy, our Sace building, where we make many of our low voltage circuit breakers. So what you can see here immediately is a graphical representation of the assets. So here at the moment, I'm taking a bit of an asset management view of the building. And so it starts to show you the assets by the health by age. It gives you an asset health indicator overall, connectivity and other items like that. But where it starts to get really interesting, of course, is you can start to visually see the asset and actually interrogate individual components. For example, this circuit breaker here, we can start to look very quickly at its overall health index, the next time to its maintenance, its current environmental data, its diagnostic status, and what it's actually currently doing, whether there's any alarms or trips or anything. So the software immediately brings in all of these variables and assigns it a health index. So a user immediately can see, green is good. This piece of asset is operating at its optimal or near to it. You, of course, can then interrogate further and start to look at what it's been doing in terms of its performance. Let's just have a quick look over the past month at its current and temperature. So you can see very quickly we begin to see the phases across this breaker as an example. Of course, alarms and events. So it allows you to immediately see what the historic history has been on this piece of equipment and gives us a full indication there of what's occurred. Maintenance. So here's where we can get into the predictive maintenance area. So you can see it's showing via its health index and how the next time it needs to be maintained. So you can see here it's predicting its next maintenance phase to be somewhere over here in actually quite a while out in 2024. And that may alter as the item degrades over time or may change in its usage pattern over time. So you can see it gives it a reliability index here So this is predictive maintenance live in real time happening for this asset. Then, of course, what we all need is reference documentation and other key settings. So that's a very quick example of coming down to right down to the device layer at the field level and being able to have a quick look at it from an operational and asset management perspective. And here's the entire asset list, of course, with EV chargers and other things available on this site. This site has solar panels and EV chargers and a whole bunch of other assets such as generators and the lot happening as you would in an industrial plant. I'm going to quickly change views here to the energy management view, just to give you a flavor of now you can do also all the energy management related to the site all in one platform. So you can see here immediately, these are all the areas of the plant, their active energy, reactive energy, apparent energy. You can see the energy monitoring here across the entire plant historically. We can then see our costs and our cost comparisons. You can bring in multiple sites into this software. So in Energy and Asset Manager, there's no limit. We can bring multiple sites and compare those sites globally for the same assets. So you can see very quickly we're starting to get into where can I improve my energy usage and what's it costing me. And here we go again in the predictive analytics. So here it's predicting the upcoming power loads and load forecasting for the plant. So this now allows people to get into, okay, when will I shed loads? How can I shed loads? Can I go and negotiate a better deal with my utility provider around showing them what my usage patterns are and how I can support grid stabilization by shedding or loading up in a certain period of time, or linking my load profiles to my generation profiles on site so I minimize my costs. So you can see I've gone through that pretty quickly, but I just wanted to give you a feel of some of the software that exists now, and this is all cloud-based, and I'm doing this live, to monitor assets real time and get proactive alerts real time to be able to manage these kind of assets. Okay, so let's jump into some real life examples and what we've done in our Smart Cities portfolio to try and bring these to life for everybody. So this is Calvary Hospital in Adelaide. In Calvary Hospital, we put in our ABB iBus KNX solution, which helps the building functions like lighting, shutter control, heating, ventilation, security, and energy management fully be automated. We installed a portion of that into Calvary Hospital with some of our partners. And what that allows it to do is actually fully automate the hospital and really get the value from having the automation. So it allows the building to adapt with the time of day, the temperature of the day, and automatically adjust things like shutters, lighting, and that kind of function, and the HVAC functions of the building. So really, really powerful. That can all happen automatically. This is leading to about 60% in energy costs in this kind of scenario. So now imagine that. Imagine being able to take that hospital or that building, which is an equivalent of a hospital, and being able to use voice control in the room to fully automate some of that room's functionalities or the entire room's functionalities. Imagine what that means in a hospital settings for from a safety perspective and also from a comfort perspective for both the staff and the patients. Now imagine the maintenance staff having full access to that 24/7 via, for example, Energy and Asset Manager, as I showed you. Here's another example, which is Melbourne Metro trains, where we installed an energy storage system. So essentially, as the trains pull into the station, we capture the energy under braking, and then as they launch back out of the station, we re-inject that energy back into the train. So that's allowing a significant amount of energy to be saved, about 15% reduction in carbon emissions just from that kind of a solution. Now imagine taking that to a digitally connected network of energy management and optimization systems, controlled for optimal times of power re-injection and looking at train schedules real time. That's possible right now. Here's one of the examples. We've done some of this in Australia also, as I mentioned, in Brisbane Metro and Perth Metro. But here's one from Norway, where we work together with Volvo for our pantograph e-bus charging solutions. And that's in line with trying to meet Norway's target of a 50 to 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So now imagine this, a network of e-buses all being managed by our network management solution, managing load profiles, ensuring operators charge at optimal times based on energy prices. Imagine being able to overlay a fully autonomous bus system on top of that. I mean, this leads to massive operational savings, and all of this is becoming possible right now. Certainly the automated bus part is the part that's missing at the moment, but starting to be trialled. The rest of it can be done right now. Probably one of the world's most famous buildings, the Burj Khalifa, where ABB installed its ABB Ability solutions across the building, which led to about a 30% saving in operational costs just by able to have real-time sensor data and condition monitoring of the building and having proactive insights and alerts. So this gives the Burj Khalifa's operators and maintenance staff real comfort that their building is being monitored 24/7 and they're being proactively and predictively alerted to things that may go wrong. And now at a city scale, this is Zaragoza in Spain, where we worked with the local city to actually digitalize using the eKeep Up product, and that was some of the products I showed you in our Saatchi factory earlier, across a number of their landmark buildings, and brought them all back up into one ABB Ability solution to supervise all of them. So this is being done right now, or has been done right now at a city scale. So you can see this is happening as we speak, and these solutions are real. Now imagine a fully digitalized mine, an autonomous mine. So what you've got on the screen here is Bulletin, where we did the pantograph or overhead electrification of their haul trucks that you can see there, having an enormous CO2 saving, both and saving diesel of about 830 cubic meters. So now imagine taking that and fully digitalizing the entire mine and electrifying the entire mine. So that is possible right now. It can be fully automated. We are at the moment working with the University of Western Australia around the standards on how you would do that from an Industry 4.0 perspective, and allow the entire mine or the entire asset to be digitalized. So this is in larger industries and segments like oil and gas and mining. This is happening right now. The emergence of fully digital and autonomous offshore platforms or mines and everything in between is having a significant impact, and will have a significant impact on the cost per ton or the cost per petajoule or whatever it may be, the commodity involved. These is happening right now as we speak, and they're being monitored 24/7 and having that real-time view and optimization 24/7. Just wanted to share with you before I leave you with some resources. I highly recommend the ABB smartsocieties.com site. That's a 3D landscape where you can navigate all the way from the field layer all the way up to the cloud layer through an actual three-dimensional representation of an entire city, including industries and everything. It's really quite clever. We're building it out all the time, and you can actually drill down and have a look at how you would build a smart city or a smart society from the ground up with some of our solutions. So it's quite neat. And there's a few other things there drilling into buildings specifically or smart homes in our case studies if you wish. I thank you for your time today. I thank you for being a part of it. I leave you with a short video, something we're very, very proud of. This is called Casa Capace. In Italian, casa means home. Capace means the capacity to, or the ability to. And it shows how digitalization can mean opportunity for all people in our societies and allow everyone to be a part of our society in a greater way and have a more meaningful contribution. Thanks very much.
you, Mario, and thank you, James and Rory. I really enjoyed those presentations. There was so much in there. We had so many different perspectives, so I'm really keen to dive into the questions from our audience. So it is that time now for our audience to get involved. So please ask our speakers questions via the chat box and also include who your question is actually directed to. Now, we've already got a whole bunch of questions that have been submitted while you've been all registering, so we can start with those, but please feel free to put those other questions in the chat box. Now, we only have about 25 minutes, so we won't get to everything, but I really encourage you to put your questions in the chat box. So without further ado, let's go to our first question. This question is from Ken in Victoria. He's talking about smart cities, and it's a term that we've known for a long time. But thinking about, there's no way of finding this actual one size fits all. We haven't found that yet, and how close we are to actually getting that. I want to start with this question because I want to give you my thoughts on it as well. I feel like we used to talk about smart cities as this kind of final destination, but actually, it's this journey that we've gone on, and each city, each community is so unique and so different. So actually, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution for everyone. So I'm keen to get our panelists' thoughts on that as well. So actually, I might go to you, Mario, first. What are your thoughts on this one?
Thanks, Zoe. I agree with you, actually. I don't think there is a one size fits all, but I think we see the emergence of standardized building blocks, if you will, within an urban landscape, right? So we have buildings that are energy intensive. We have public transport. We have all these kind of standard building blocks that are common to most of our urban areas anyway, and most of our societies, right? We have homes, we have industry. So it's through those standard building blocks, I think we start to see the solutions of the smart cities emerge, right? And then when you combine all those solutions from those standard building blocks, I think you can customize to whatever that specific context is for that smart city or that residential area or whatever it may be, industry. So absolutely agree. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I don't think there can be in many regards, but certainly by having these common building blocks and solutions for common building blocks, you can then pick those, put those together and start to have a unique and customized sort of smart city solution for that environment. Thank you for the
Great.
question.
Thanks, Mario. Thank you. James, did you want to input into this one as well?
No, I don't think there's one size fits all. I would agree with that. But I do think there are, I look at from our point of view with connectivity around 5G, I do think that it's very versatile. So it can be used in many different ways to help support the different use cases.
Yeah, excellent. And Rory, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think what I'd add is there is we see a number of common problems regardless of sort of place, so whether that's in regional or urban environments. And I think sort of the way that you go about the solution or planning for the solution should probably be the same. What the actual sort of end solution, the tech that you use, how you work that in with the sort of the local character of the community and stuff, that of course has to be individual and kind of relevant to the fundamental place. I do want to pick up on kind of Mario's points that we can have forms of sort of standardization. It's going to be important to make sure that we've got consistency, say our approach to data and so forth. And so there are absolutely learnings that we can kind of replicate. I think for me, it's the big thing about how do we move from where we are today, which I think is still sort of subscale, to sort of properly scaled, properly normalized.
Yeah, excellent. I think all really great points. Having those standardized kind of building blocks, and again, Rory, as you said, those common problems that we're facing as well, we can really learn and share from each other. And I think it really shows how we're maturing in this space as well. That we're starting to talk about, it's not just a very, I guess, piecemeal approach where we are thinking across different disciplines, across the different geographies, and how we can actually solve real problems for real people, which is really important. And And Mario, I think you touched on this about public transport and shifts and change we're seeing in this area. What is the role of public transport for sustainable cities? And should the government encourage private sector to get more involved and invest more in public transport? Might start with you, Mario.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Zoe. Absolutely. I mean, public transport is obviously a major engine, if you will, of getting people to move through and around the city. And of course, we all can't be on the road at once. It's not possible, right? With the greater urbanisation, there's just not enough infrastructure. So, we've all been to major cities like London, New York, those kind of places, Hong Kong, where public transport is the mainstay transport of getting around some of these metropolises. So it's fundamental to society and fundamental to a smart city moving forward. And now we're getting to the area of what does that public transport look like? Of course, much of rail and tram networks are already electrified, allowing those to take advantage of sort of a smart green generation, if you will. So that's great. And we're seeing the shift towards the electrification of buses and those other carbon fuel, if you will, carbon producing fuels such as diesels or natural gas is now starting to move towards electrification also, which is fantastic. But as part of that, what's interesting is the shift to bring in digitalization and get greater insight across those networks and start to have those networks speak back up to other assets like the generating assets or the grid itself, or a combination thereof, and actually also into users and allowing users to get an insight into what's going on in that public transport space with the bus or the train that they're about to get on. So yes, I think it's absolutely fundamental, and the shift towards the electrification, particularly of bus networks, is happening right now. And very, very pleased at ABB. We're very pleased, and that we've seen all, I think, state governments come out with strong incentives in driving, particularly the bus networks, towards electrification. New South Wales is probably a little bit ahead of most of the other states, but they've all moved in a very strong way, and they're actually starting to incentivize that. We're also seeing that shift in the electric vehicle space. So we're very pleased. I think that's continuing to do that will continue to drive communities and businesses towards that economy. Thank you.
Yeah, great. No, thanks, Mario. Rory, from a government perspective, public transport, what role does it play in a smart city?
Look, it's a critical role. I think I want to take a step back and say smart cities have to be sustainable, have to be resilient. Public transport is going to be a key component of solving for that. Again, I'm kind of with Mario. We have to have a sort of a healthy and robust system. The more that we can kind of drive that. That system to be minimizing its emissions as well, it's going to be good. But there was one point that I wanted to bring on actually is active transport. Certainly be remiss of me as I sit within the cities and active transport division, because it's sort of a recognition that it isn't necessarily always going to be sort of the bus, the rail, etc. as a means to get around. Kind of walking and cycling have to be an important part of the mix. And also starting to think about different options for things like freight, last mile solutions. And smart tech's got to play a really integral part in this. All of these things are going to rely on data. It's going to rely on data being able to flow around the system and interacting actually with sort of other verticals. So transport can't just think of it if its own self as an integrated vertical. But for instance, how does a local government, when it's kind of running its high street, link into information in terms of the network from Transport New South Wales to make sure that it's like, if it's running an activation, getting people into that place and out of that place and so forth. So I wanted just to add those couple of key pieces just on that active transport bit, and also just understanding that it's an overall, we got to look at the system as a whole.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for adding the active travel in there as well, because that was one of our other questions. What role does walking play in smart, sustainable cities? So thanks so much for adding that, because it's so important. And, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we want to be able to move around. So and in a way that's, best for our health, best for our well-being, all those type of things. And I think if we, and I know we've all talked about different aspects of that smart city in your presentations today, but really bringing it back to that human element is so key. And I think we're talking more and more about that as the conversation would, and particularly during, this last few years or so, really linking in, realizing that it all links together, and the sense of being humans, right? And that we want to have good, high quality lives and be able to really input into our societies and communities. Speaking of communities, now, keen to bring James back into the conversation as well. There's a question here specifically for you, James, around remote locations. So, can we use existing technologies to decentralize connectivity? I've got an example here similar to the Apple AirTag solution.
Yeah, thanks for that, and sorry about that connectivity issue. Look, I guess yes, to answer your question, but I guess it really depends on the use case and what you're trying to do. I think fundamentally you need good connectivity to provide a good, consistent service. Now, taking the example used, the AirTag, that's a really cool solution. Where you put a tag on your bag or your wallet or something like that, and if you lose it, it connects via Bluetooth to someone else's device perhaps, and then it's connected to the iCloud, and you're able to hopefully locate where you've lost whatever you've lost. I haven't used it, so I don't know all the specifics. But it still fundamentally requires a connectivity network, whether that's a mobile network somewhere or satellite or NBN, whatever it is. It still requires a good connectivity network to actually realise that particular use case. So I guess that's probably the main take I would give on that question is you can do stuff around the edges, but you still do need to rely on a good solid network. The other point too is around the ecosystem, and that's a really cool solution that's mentioned there, but it is fairly specific as well to the Apple. So it's good on networks to have a platform there that enables a broad ecosystem, so different devices and use cases can be used. I'm not sure if that answers
Thanks
your
for that,
question.
James. Yeah, no, I think that really thinking about those networks, like as you said, we talked about that specific use case, and it's quite specific and obviously quite exclusive to somebody that uses an Apple device. But then thinking about, well, yeah, we're thinking about that solution, but what's the network that we need underneath it, and what's that ecosystem to be able to then offer different solutions for different people is really key. And I think in remote locations in particular, that's also really important because we know that the physical distance might be great, but we can actually really decrease that if we've got this connectivity, depending on what we're actually doing. And I think that leads quite nicely into another question here we've got for you, Rory, around remote and regional communities. What types of engagements have you had with the communities in New South Wales, particularly in regional areas?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. There's probably a couple of things I want to mention. First of all, we did quite a piece, like I think it's a seminal piece of work. I mentioned it, the Smart Places Customer Charter, last year. We did a significant amount of engagement work through the development of that document, including running a number of sessions. Both in with regional community, but also of course urban and metropolitan. We also engaged directly with consultants who were able to represent for an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander or Indigenous perspective as well, and we sought to really build that into the charter. And it's one of the key things that we wanted to make sure that when we talk about a place and we think about sort of like what's the smart technology or what's the particular problem about the place and how can we solve it, that we always have that community angle at the front. We actually are thinking about the individual, the person in that. From a project perspective, with the Smart Place Acceleration Program, it's been interesting. We've seen about 50% of applications into that being from a regional area versus metropolitan area. Whilst that hasn't translated fundamentally into having a 50-50 share from an investment perspective, there are a number of really cool projects that are happening in a regional area, including one I just call out. It's called Open Air, which is about driving low-cost air quality sensors and helping local governments build up their capability to use smart technology. And we've got a few other investments that have like that whole of New South Wales impact. So look, there's work underfoot. I'd also note the piece around the connectivity layer, and my colleagues at New South Wales Telco Authority are doing quite a bit to try and make sure that we are minimising what really is a bit of a digital divide at the moment. So you've got the Black Spots program. There's a connecting sort of country communities and investments in there as well. So I'm not, work to be done, but activity is happening within regional areas, not just metropolitan areas.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think I always love hearing about what regional and rural communities are doing and what partnerships are happening, because we know that there's so many different industries in those areas as well, and that people are innovating by necessity. You have to come up with new things, and I think like even like agriculture, we can see lots of applications of technology, not because it's the latest coolest thing to do, but because it makes things more effective, more efficient, and safer as well. I've got a great question here for you, Mario, about how you're working with industries. So they've got an example here of mines that may be stuck in their old ways of working. How do you actually overcome that? That business model to bring in this new tech. And well, is this a widespread problem, or are most industries really happy to jump on board?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for the question. I'd love to be able to sit here and say most of them are on the journey and it's a no-brainer. It's not, in actual fact. If I sort of break the market down, if I use the miners, it's just an example of industry, because I think the trend is the same across industry. So the big boys and girls at the big end of town, the major mining players, the use case for digitalization is a no-brainer. They're moving there. They understand very well what it means for them. The same as the decarbonisation of their industry. There's nothing to be explained there. They understand it. They understand it very, very well and understand their role to play. I think as you get down into sort of the SME layer, the small to medium enterprise layer, that's where the challenges begin to arise. I think many of those players don't understand the business case, have probably not sat down and looked at the business case to take that next step towards digitalization and understanding the benefits that can be unlocked. There's sometimes some negative perceptions that it's quite expensive to begin to do this. It's actually not. I mean, I think it was James who mentioned it earlier. The Industrial Revolution, the 4.0, is exactly that, right? Sensors are getting cheaper and smaller and easier to be able to put into the field and then get insights into things that used to be dumb and make them smart. So, generally speaking, at the top end of town, not an issue. At the bottom end of those kind of industry verticals, we tend to have, and it's common across all industry verticals, as I said, you tend to have the same conversation. You're explaining the use case and the business case and showing them via examples how they can unlock some of these great insights. Interestingly, what I find is, and what I say to many people is, don't waste your next OPEX or CAPEX expenditure. Digitalization is a vision, it's a philosophy. You don't take it in just one step. And so you find many people, let's run a simple example, a motor will blow up, or a piece of electrical system will go. They'll replace that. Sometimes they don't realize they're replacing it with latest generation stuff that may automatically give them access to digitalization that they aren't even aware of, because they don't make them that way anymore. Like much of ABB's products, and we have thousands and tens of thousands of products, most of them now are digital natives. They all spit out ones and zeros that you can then add value from and do more with. But even if they are a dumb solution, so to speak, if you're in there and doing an OPEX phase, if you've got this mindset of moving towards digitalization, something like a smart sensor from ABB on the side of a motor, which is totally wirelessly connected, gives you immediate massive insights into the motor, what's hanging off the motor, like a pump or whatever else may be. And you can look at that on your phone 24/7 and get an insight immediately. So, that's a long way of saying it. The big guys get it. The small to medium enterprise, I think, have got a long way to go still to understand the use cases, but they are starting to move. It's starting to reach them. And 5G is a great example, particularly in the industry space. People are starting to, those kind of technologies, because we're seeing it in our day-to-day lives, and naturally now being applied in the industry space. People are saying, hey, can I take advantage of something like 5G in my factory, or can I automate in a greater way using a totally wireless system? And that is in itself making those older use cases, which might have been more expensive, easier now to implement, because, for example, you don't need a whole backbone of comms cables to make it happen. So, yeah, that's as best as I can answer that one. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, no, that's thanks for sharing that, and it leads really nicely into what I was going to bring James in to talk about 5G. So how do you think 5G networks in Australia can be really helpful? This question in particular is in the construction industry, and what's its efficiencies? Over to you, James.
Yeah, thanks for that question, and a good question. And I guess that's a use case for 5G. So in the construction industry, I guess I don't come from the construction industry, of course. However, I gave an example in the presentation around Taylor Constructions, and they're using the 5G network from Telstra with Taylor, with Cradlepoint 5G routers, and they're doing a number of different use cases there. They're exploiting high capacity, high data rates, for example, for high resolution video, for things like understanding giving design reviews on the construction site, so they can actually visualize it, for safety and for sensors as well. So I think there's a number of different use cases that it could facilitate. And I think too, when you're looking at sort of the wide area network and something like, in that example of Cradlepoint, it's something that could actually be deployed at a particular construction site as well. So you can have these capabilities right there on the site as well, and put the applications and use cases that you want on top of that.
Yeah, thanks, James. And I think there's so many different use cases, and I think bring it down to the use cases is really important too. Because I think when we often talk about, even, smart cities or this kind of utopia of things, people might get overwhelmed by, there's so many technologies that we could use, et cetera, but really bring it down. What are the problems that we're actually trying to solve, and actually giving ourselves permission to think about those, and think about new ways of working, new ways of doing things, is really important in this space. And whether it's, super advanced, manufacturing, or whether it's a local community wanting to improve their neighborhoods. There's so many opportunities in this space, which is why I love being in this space as well, because it's so broad and so many different people need to be involved. Now, we are nearly out of time, and so thanks. There's so many questions here that I just won't get to today, but I really appreciate everyone's engagement in this, and so thanks to the audience for really jumping in and throwing in your questions there. Some really tricky ones as well, and some great ones. Now, we've only got 3 minutes to go. I need a tweetable answer to finish, which just means it's 140 characters or less. We might start with you, James. If people are thinking about, okay, smart cities, what's the first kind of step they want to take on this smart city journey?
My answer to that would be is to start doing something. You have a terrific capability there, and I'll speak from the perspective of 5G. There are so many different things you can achieve with it. You don't have to solve everything on day one. Like Mario mentioned, just small pieces of data can make a big difference, and then expand and grow on that. So I think just start. There's a lot that can be done, and not everything has to be done from the start.
Amazing. Thanks, James. Mario, how about you?
I think James stole my tweet there. No, the same. Whenever I have this conversation, I always say the same thing. Start small, don't feel overwhelmed, eat the elephant in pieces, and really just have a vision to work towards, and then apply that vision through all of your operations as you get the opportunities to do so.
Excellent. And Rory, final word.
Yeah, people and problem first, technology second, understand there's huge amounts of help and resource out there already. You're not going to be on your own.
Perfect. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much. So please join me once again in thanking Rory Brown, James Evans, and Mario Macri for their time and input today. I love clapping on these things. It's always anticlimax. But thanks so much. I'm clapping behind the scenes. And I'd really like to thank Engineers Australia and their industry partner ABB for their support for this webinar today. We would love you to please complete a short feedback form, which is linked in the description box below to help us improve and plan for future sessions. And thank you again for joining us. And we really hope to see you at our next Thought Leaders event. Thanks again.